صل على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين. ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أموات بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون. ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين. وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. सकीना उठो मेरी जान उठो रिहाई मिली चलो घर चले। सकीना उठो मेरी जान उठो रिहाई मिली चलो घर चले। ये करती थी माँ लहद पर बुका میری لاڈلی چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. یہاں سے چلو چلے کربلا وہیں پر تمہیں ملیں گے چچا. ستم جو ہوئے بتانا انہیں دکھانا انہیں یہ کرتا جلا. چچا جان کو دکھانا ذرا ردا خون بری چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. بتانا انہیں سبھی سختیاں ملی کس قدر تجھے گر کیا. بتانا انہیں سبھی سختیاں ملی کس قدر تجھے گر کیا. ہماری ردا لٹی کس طرح چھینی کس طرح تیری بالیاں. بتانا انہیں بجھی کس طرح تیری تشنگی چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. پدر سے ملو تو دل جوئی ہو بتانا انہیں بہت روئی ہو. پدر سے ملے تو دل جوئی ہو بتانا انہیں بہت روئی ہو. قسم لو اگر تمہارے بنا سکینہ کبھی کہیں سوئی ہو. لحد باپ کی ملی جب تجھے تو کہنا یہی چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. لحد جب ملے تجھے بھائی کی تو کہنا اسے میری لاڈلی. لحد جب ملے تجھے بھائی کی تو کہنا اسے میری لاڈلی. رہائی ملی ہمیں قید سے ہمیں اب نہیں اذیت کوئی. میرے بے زباں اٹھو گھر چلے شبی ہے نبی چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. لبے القمہ تو کرنا فغاں تیری موج ہے ابھی تک رواں. لبے القمہ تو کرنا فغاں تیری موج ہے ابھی تک رواں. میری پیاس پر ہوئے جو فدا چچا کے میرے ہے بازو کہاں. کہاں مشق ہے کہاں ہے علم کہاں ہے جری چلو گھر چلے. سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو رہائی ملی چلو گھر چلے. نہ اب غم کوئی نہ افتاد ہے، وہ زنجیر سے اب آزاد ہے۔ نہ اب غم کوئی نہ افتاد ہے، وہ زنجیر سے اب آزاد ہے۔ پھوپھی بھی تیری تیرے ساتھ ہے، تیرے ساتھ ہی وہ سجاد ہے۔ میری غم زدہ شب غم کٹی، سحر ہو چکی، چلو گھر چلے۔ سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو، رہائی ملی، چلو گھر چلے۔ لبوں پر تیری یہی بات تھی، وطن جائیں گے کبھی ہم پھوپھی۔ لبوں پر تیرے یہی بات تھی، وطن جائیں گے کبھی ہم پھوپھی۔ تجھے شمر کا نہیں خوف اب، ستائیں گے نہ تجھے آشکیاں۔ نکل قید سے شروع ہم کرے نئی زندگی، چلو گھر چلے۔ سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو، رہائی ملی، چلو گھر چلے۔ سکینہ اٹھو میری جان اٹھو، رہائی ملی، چلو گھر چلے۔ یہ کرتی تھی ماں لحد پر بکا، میری لاڈلی، چلو گھر چلے۔ صلوات علی محمد۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد۔ جزاک اللہ۔
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A couple of announcements before we start the Majlis. Step up your life with the Bab al-Ridha Islamic Intensive Short Course. The Bab al-Ridha Intensive Short Course is running for an 11th consecutive year in the holy city of Qum for brothers and sisters aged between 18 to 35 years. The course dates are between the 16th of December 2023 to the 7th of January 2024. The ground package is $1,200 equivalent to 999 pounds, and the application deadline is the 9th of October 2023. The Bab al-Ridha Intensive Short Course is a 3-week course fully organized by Hawza students to provide Muslim youth with essential Islamic knowledge and a correct Islamic ideology together with practical skills and an excellent opportunity to meet like-minded individuals. With intellectually challenging and interactive sessions, field trips, ziyarah, and fun activities, the course is a whole package designed to provide a life-changing experience. For more information about the course and how to apply, please visit the website BRISC, that Bab al-Ridha Intensive Short Course, .babalridha.com. For the next 3 nights, we have the honor of hosting Brother Ibraheim Ansari. After completing his bachelor's degree in law at Brunel University in London and taking pre-introductory Hawza lessons in London under the supervision of his father, Dr. Sheikh Rashad Al-Ansari, Ibrahim Al-Ansari went on to continue his studies at the Hawza of Najaf, where he is residing now. He has been reciting for the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam from a very young age and started public speaking and orating in honor of the Holy Household in 2017. He has also been teaching lessons at several centers and organizations to various age groups since 2014, covering a range of Islamic subjects and topics. On the pulpit, he has covered a wide range of topics including social jurisprudence, morality, creed, and history. Brother Ibrahim, we are grateful that you have accepted our humble invitation to grace us with your presence and your knowledge in these nights, where we commemorate the nights of Arbaeen. Can I please ask the Mu'mineen to join me in welcoming him to the minbar with 3 loud salawat.
Sometimes if he does, just put it up.
That's fine. محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. A second salawat for the love of Imam al-Hassan and Hussein. And the third and final salawat for the love of Fatima al-Zahra with the loudest of your voices. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك الطاهرين. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم. أمنها من لجأ إلى حصنكم سادتي. سيدي يا أبا عبد الله، يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة، غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. بأبي وأمي من ذبح من القفا، بأبي وأمي من ذبح عطشانا. يا ابن شبيب إن جدي الحسين قتل عطشانا غريب. تركوه في العرى دامي الجسم سليب. يا ابن شبيب إن يوم الحسين أقرح جفوننا. أسبل دموعنا ذل عزيز زنا. سيدي يا أبا عبد الله، يا ليتنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم فنفوز فوزا عظيما. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة وأنا ربكم فاعبدون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Enlighten your majalis and bless this gathering with 3 loud salawat على محمد وآل محمد. First and foremost, we start by sending our deepest of condolences to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Mahdi al-Muntazar. May Allah hasten his reappearance, our great maraja, our scholars, yourselves, your families, and the whole Islamic ummah, on the remembrance of the 40th of Imam al-Hussein, alayhi afdal salati wassalam. This 40th, the day of Arbaeen, that did not just witness the remembrance of 40 days after the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, rather it witnessed the captives returning to Karbala, and hence it renews the tragedy of Ashura. And this is something very important for us to take away with us, that when it comes to the remembering of the 40th, many ask, why do we not necessarily commemorate the 40th of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Why do we not commemorate the 40th of Amir al-Mu'mineen or any other infallible? And this is a common question, and which we might answer in the third night inshallah in more detail. However, just very quickly, the idea of the 40th of Imam al-Hussein, other than the fact that it has narrations on commemoration and narrations in terms of its visitation, there is also narrations of the renewal of the tragedy of Ashura, for it was the day in which the captives would return the blessed heads of the shuhada to their bodies. And this in itself is a great tragedy, and hence it is important and vital for communities to come together, and may Allah bless this community for coming together on the 40th of Imam al-Hussein to help Sahib al-Zaman commemorate the tragedy of his grandfather Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. And I am truly honored to be of your service inshaAllah. Jazakumullah khair al-jaza. And many times we come together as a community and we feel some sort of strength, maybe because we feel a strength in our identity. But the reality is that many of us, and I know for example for myself growing up and for other friends that I have spoken to and many uncles that I have spoken to, in fact I gave a similar topic as a workshop not too long ago in the city of Manchester, and I realized that even uncles at the age of 60 and 70 were still struggling with the issue of identity. And the reality is that identity is a struggle. Where do I belong? What forms my identity? Is my identity formed by my name? Is it formed by my occupation? Is it formed by the country I am from? Or is it formed by the country my grandparents are from? When does it change from me being, for example, in the case that my father, for example, was born in the land of Iraq? When does it change for me to become, for example, a British individual? If I was born in Britain, which I wasn't by the way, but if I was, when would that change? Or does it change in the future generations? These are things that people ask. When does it change? So what is my identity? If this is something that can constantly change, can this be what makes our fundamental identity? Because what makes identity even more of a struggle is the fact that the world has become a global village. I mean, if you're a member of the EU, which back in the day, Great Britain was a part of them, which is why you will find that many people came from Sweden and from the Netherlands and found it very easy to settle. I, for example, was born in the Netherlands and I came to the United Kingdom in 2008, and it was very easy. That transfer between Holland and the United Kingdom was a very easy transfer. And even when Britain decided to come out of the EU, one of the most important things for them to reassure was the European citizens that were in Britain, to make sure that, by the way, if you have been here for 3 years or more, you can apply for residency, and then we will grant it to you and you'll be fine as long as you have spent 3 years here. Which means what? Which means this idea of moving from country to country was made very easy, and they saw that a whole continent, nearly a whole continent, was all one country in one sense or another. The difference was what? Language. So then, is language what forms my identity? Am I, for example, as an Arab-speaking individual, anyone who speaks Arabic, is that my identity? You see, the questions keep coming because I will keep getting confused on what makes my core identity. What makes my fundamental identity? And are these other questions which I am seeking an answer for also parts of my core identity without me realizing? Or are they separate? And the reality is that these questions must be answered, because the reality is that the more confused about my identity, the more negative consequences that it can have on myself in terms of my mental health from one aspect, and from another aspect even in terms of my position in society. Because reality is, identity is what gives us humans a strength in our society. And therefore today what we will aim to do is first of all give a very quick answer to this question. And then after that we will look at the challenges of this identity and why identity is a true struggle and a challenge. And then we will aim to look at what makes up our core identity as Shi'i Muslim individuals, inshaAllah. And we shall do that with your permission and with the blessed salawat 3 times upon Muhammad and his holy progeny. The very quick answer is that our identity should be based on common values. This is a very quick answer. Identity is based on common values. Because I look at the time of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. And you know, when you look at different cities during his time, many cities were also known by the tribe that lived in that city. So when we say that different tribes came together to follow the Prophet, it also means in one sense or another that big cities, different cities of major families came to follow the Prophet. And at that time when we talk about cities, it is potentially what we call countries today. The way that the Muslim world was made up, the way that Arabia was made up, even at the time of the Prophet. And after that, you will find that different cities became countries. I mean, at that time, you talk about Al-Iraq. Iraq today, you know, as a place that starts from just below Turkey, and it ends where? By Kuwait. Something that stretches from Basra all the way to north of Kurdistan. Iraq, back in that time, was Kufa. In fact, before Kufa, it was Basra. It was Basra. Then Kufa became Iraq. Then when you look at narrations and they say Al-Iraqain, it means Kufa and Basra. This is historically speaking. What you know as Sham today, or what you know as Mesopotamia, these are specific parts of the world that keep changing based on certain political issues. And this is not our topic today, but it's for us to understand that when we say different tribes and different cities came to follow the Prophet, what did they come to follow him on? They came to follow him on common values that they shared. The common value was Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. It is this that shaped the Muslim identity. And it is from this that we understand the verse that we started today's majlis with from Surah Al-Anbiya, where Allah says, Inna hadhihi ummatukum ummatan wahida. This nation of yours is one nation. Wa ana rabbukum, and I am your Lord, fa'budun. So worship me. You have a very similar verse in Surah Al-Mu'minun, where Allah Azza wa Jal says, وَإِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً, and this nation of yours is one nation. وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ, and I am your Lord, فَاتَّقُونَ. So be God conscious, fear Allah Azza wa Jal. This idea of your nation is one nation comes from where? The fact that different nations and different tribes and different communities came together based on sharing specific common values that made them one nation. That one nation all returns back to what? A single Lord, one God, that is Allah, so worship Him. That was the common value, which is why Allama Tabatabai, may Allah bless his soul, when you look at his tafsir, he says ummah means a specific group of people that go towards one goal, or that go in a specific direction towards one goal. This is the meaning of ummah. Ummah is a group of people that go in a specific direction towards one goal. And therefore, when you go back to this verse now, that we have understood that this is the meaning of ummah, this nation of yours, this group of people of yours is one nation. It is one group of people going in one direction for one goal. What is that goal? وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ. and I am your Lord, so worship me. Which means the common value that brings us all together all lies under La ilaha illallah. And this makes sense, because when I look at the prophets, they all shared one creedal aspect that they were teaching their nation, which was La ilaha illallah. From the time of Adam, alayhi wa ala nabiyyina wa alihi afdalu salati wa salam, up until the time of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the common value that was shared is La ilaha illallah. Which means what shapes our identity truly is the word of La ilaha illallah. And you will find many narrations in this aspect in terms of the idea of La ilaha illallah. For example, one narration, the golden chain narration, that the word of La ilaha illallah is my fortress, and whoever enters my fortress is safe from my punishment. Of course, with specific prerequisites, we'll come to later inshallah. However, the idea is that this word of La ilaha illallah is truly what makes a specific individual share a common value and makes them understand the core and the principle and their fundamental identity before anything else. If this is the case, why do we still face a challenge? If it's as simple as this, why do we still face a challenge? The reality is that we as human beings do not choose our identity. We do not choose the other layers that shape our identity. These are things that are given to us through natural means, of course. For example, who my parents are. I did not choose who my parents were. I did not choose what tribe I came from, what family I came from. I did not choose what country I was born in. Yes, maybe after that I might have a choice in terms of what country I might then reside in. However, those things that shape specific parts which we think to be our core identity are not necessarily things that I have chosen. And this is why the challenge still remains. Because I then go into confusion of how do I link the two? How do I link the common value of La ilaha illallah to this idea that I can come from multiple ethnicities and I can come from multiple countries and I have a specific, for example, way in living based on the specific family that I come from? And therefore I need to go back another step, which is the idea of the upbringing, the idea of how do I then raise my children, how do I then raise my community on understanding that La ilaha illallah does not necessarily contradict with all of these other outer layers. And I call them outer layers for a reason. I will come to why that is in just a second. Because look, when I look at specific types of nature and innate acts in a human being, it is important for me to look at youth growing up. It is important for me to look at children growing up, especially between the age of, from birth up until the age of 10. You will find a lot of innate features start showing within them. One of them being is that at the age of 4, you will find that many children start to question their identity. Who am I? Where did I come from? How did I come into this world? What is my name? Who is my granddad? Who is my grandmother? These are types of questions trying to then understand family structures. What is an uncle? What is an auntie? You see these questions? These are questions that children are asking in order for them to understand their identity. This is from the age of what? 4. When we understand this, we understand why when you come to specific school curriculums, that at that young age, they are trying to show a specific way of identity, or trying to expose them to a certain identity, or trying to expose them that specific identities are, for example, accepted wherever you go, as a way of thinking. You start to understand this. And the reality is, we also need to understand this. We also need to understand at the young age of 4, I need to instill a clear identity into my children. When my child comes to ask, who am I, where did I come from, all of these questions, I need to be clear in how I answer them. I need to be clear in showing them these common values that we share. I need to be clear in installing specific values into them. You might tell me they are too young. Schools don't see them too young to learn specific things. And that means I need to be with that specific time and teach them as well. Why is it that I come as an individual? If I was to speak to a young child about Darwin theory, for example, I can speak to them about Darwinism from now until another 10 years with no shame in it, and it's very normal. You come from a single cell organism? No. You were created, Allah Azza wa Jal created Adam and He created Eve, and from them came humankind. This is very comfortable for me to answer. Why is it that then when I'm asked, or when I need to address other issues, I then address them with shame? Or I address them with a way where I, for example, do not find it comfortable to talk to my child in that specific matter? No, it should be the opposite. The idea is that I need to instill a clear identity into my child. I need to show what values my child holds, such that when they face specific questions, or when they face a specific scenario, they understand who they are, where they came from, and what their identity is. Which is why our holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has a beautiful narration. He says, "التعلم في الصغر كالنقش على الحجر." Learning at a young age is like engraving in stone. وَالتَّعَلُّمْ فِي الْكِبَرِ. What about learning at an old age? It is like الكتابة على الماء. It is like writing in water. When you engrave in stone, years after you will still see that engraving. When you write on water, the water flows and that writing is gone. This is how the Holy Prophet is describing it. Look at Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayhi. And look at the narrations in which he likens the heart of a small child to an empty plot of land. Whatever you sow in it, you will see its results. Whatever you place in it, you will see its results. You want to see healthy fruits coming out of the heart of the child? That is our duty to then sow those specific seeds at a young age. It's a duty that we have. And this is why it is very important for us to instill that clear identity into our children from a young age. And one study that I found to be truly scary, wallah, it's a scary study. There was a group of young individuals between the ages of 5 to 9. It's a study done in San Francisco, ages 5 to 9. Look at the results of the study. Wallah, it's scary. Muslim and Americans. The study was in regards to Islamophobia and identity. A third of those children, age 5 to 9, were hiding their Muslim identity out of fear. A third were hiding their Muslim identity. Even this I don't find scary. I saw some eyebrows raised. Even this I don't find scary. Do you know what I find even more scary? Half of those individuals, age 5 to 9, in that study, they did not think that you can be Muslim and American at the same time. This is what I find scary. Half of that group thought you cannot be Muslim and American at the same time. Do you know how dangerous this is? This I find to be a true danger. When we start mixing identities, this is the result. When we cause confusion in identity, this is the result. It could be fear. The result could be depression. The result could be anxiety. The result could be a state in which we have no strength. A state where we have no strength. Because we, the human beings, need a clear sense of identity for us to function normally. If we don't have a sense of identity, wallah, we don't function normally. Look at other creations. You look at wind, for example. Wind, does it need identity? No, not necessarily. Wind, Allah created it for a specific purpose. It does not need identity. For me to be able to fit into a community, do I need a sense of identity? Of course I do. For me to be able to function in a society, do I need an identity? Of course I do. Now imagine if I mix up my identities. Now imagine if I am in a state where I do not know what my identity is, or when I confuse two identities and think they are contradictory to each other. And this is something that we are facing till today. I remember, I was in a gathering and we were talking, and one of the children said, I am British. When they said, I am British, the father shouted at them. Astaghfirullah, how can this is an issue? Why are we creating a us versus them idea? Why is it us versus them? It's never us versus them. إن هذه أمتكم أمة واحدة وأنا ربكم فاعبدون. Your nation is one nation, and I am your Lord, so worship me. This is a common value that we share. If a British individual comes with that same value, that means we share the same core identity. If they do not, فإما أخ لك في الدين أو نظير لك في الخلق. They are either your equal in they are either your brother in faith or your equal in creation. As Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi afdal salatu wassalam would say, and for his remembrance of salawat. So it's important for us to understand that yes, at times we can have multiple identities. And yes, I can be Khawaja and British and Muslim and Shi'i and all of these things all at the same time. They do not contradict each other. I can be all of that at the same time. Where it then matters, it matters in my order. There is a scholar in Iran, and I heard this from another scholar in London that was narrating this. A very beautiful example he gave. He said, go into a house, and if you want to understand a person, then look at the books that they have in their house. Then if you want to understand that person more, and you want to understand that person's priorities, and understand if they are a person of knowledge, even with a lot of books in their house, then look at where they have placed their Quran in Mafatih al-Jinan. If Mafatih al-Jinan is on top of the Quran, know that there is something wrong. I find this to be a beautiful example. The reality is priorities. Mafatih al-Jinan, a very important book. Nothing is more important than the Quran. The Quran is always placed on top of Mafatih al-Jinan. Very simple idea. The same with identity. Identity, there are priorities. There is a specific identity that comes first. And therefore the question then comes, what are these identities that come first and what follows? The first of those identities that come first is our relation to Allah Azza wa Jal. Similar to the verse we started with, إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. And I will keep repeating this verse. The verse that we started this blessed Majalis with, for us to understand the importance of this. إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ. This nation of yours is one nation, and I am your Lord, so worship me. Then the other verse, وَإِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدًا. And your nation is one nation. وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاتَّقُونَ. And I am your Lord, so be God-fearing. Then you have other verses. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ حَقَّ تُقَاتِهِ وَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Oh, you who have believed, fear Allah according to how He should be feared, and do not die except as Muslims. Muslim meaning what? In submission to Allah Azza wa Jal. Therefore, the core identity that I have, and the first identity that I have, that which all my other identities stem from, is my relation to Allah Azza wa Jal, and my submissiveness to Him. For me to understand that I am a slave of Allah, not a servant. We make this mistake many times. I am not a servant of Allah, I am a slave of Allah. The difference is that by being a slave of Allah, I have no understanding of myself without my master. I am nothing and have no understanding of me, Ibraheim, without my master, Allah Azza wa Jal. This is the idea of being a slave of Allah, which is why, look at the life, for example, of Nabi Allah Isa, alayhi wa ala nabina wa alihi afdal salati wa salam. He is in a position where he needs to identify himself. He has come back. Lady Maryam would bring him back, and they ask, who is this infant that you are holding? The revelation would come that let the infant answer, correct? What does he answer? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. قَالَ إِنِّي عَبْدُ اللَّهِ. He said, I am the slave of Allah. He didn't say, I am Isa. He didn't identify himself by his name. What was his core identity? Slave of Allah. Now, he mentioned that while he was already a prophet. Do you know why? قال إني عبد الله آتاني الكتاب وجعلني نبيا. He brought me the book and He made me a prophet. Even then, he started by saying what? إني عبد الله, the core of his identity. In fact, you introduce our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam in the same manner many times without realizing. In your salah and your tashahhud, what do you say? وَأَشْهَدُ أَنَّ مُحَمَّدًا عَبْدُهُ وَرَسُولُهُ. Many don't realize, but you introduce the Prophet in the same manner. the idea of understanding that we are the slaves of Allah Azza wa Jal. This is our core identity. That which shapes the most important part of our identity. Then after that comes the relation to the Imam. The relation to the Imam. Before you ask me, where does the Prophet go? The Prophet is part of this, because the Prophet is the Imam of all the Imams. Our relation to the Imam. Why? Because on the Day of Judgment, look at Surah Al-Isra, يَوْمَ نَدْعُو كُلَّ أُنَاسٍ بِإِمَامِهِمْ. The day that we call every group of people with their Imam. Your identity on the Day of Judgment is what? Your Imam. What is this Imam that we are following? Who is this Imam that we are following? And is the Imam just on my tongue, or is this Imam truly the Imam that I am following? A question for me to ask myself, because I look at the Quran and I find another scary verse. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُهُ هَوَاهُ. Did you see the one that took their Lord as their desire? In this world, who did they say that their Lord was? Potentially Allah, but if they did not follow Allah and they followed their desire instead, when they are asked, who is your Lord? Who is that true master that you allowed to enslave you? I will answer my desire if that was the case, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Whereas Allah Azza wa Jal should be my master. Likewise, who is this Imam that I say that I am following? Because many people on the day of Ashura knew the name of Imam al-Hussein. People, in fact, some people called him, O Hussein ibn Ali. Others called him Ibn Fatima, O son of Fatima. They knew who his parents were. They knew who he was. But did they have recognition of who that Imam was? Did they have recognition of his status? No. Because if they did, they would not have done what they did. I'll narrate one story for you. It wasn't planned, but I think this is very important for us to take away as a lesson between knowing and between recognizing. At the time of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, there is a man that enters the masjid. When he enters the masjid, he sees Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba alayhi afdalu salatu wa salam there. So he goes to attempt to play with him. The Prophet looks at the man. He says, do you know who you are about to come and play with? He said to him, yes, this is Hassan ibn Ali. He said, no. Do you know who this person that you are coming to play with, who this is? He already answered him, Hassan ibn Ali. I mean, if I ask you today, do you know who this individual is? You'll tell me, yes, this is his name. He's saying, do you know? Meaning, do you have recognition of who this individual is? Knowing his name is not enough. Yes, Hassan. He said, no. Do you know? He said, Ya Rasulullah, who is it? He said, Innahu imam, qama wa inqa'at. He's an imam whether he rises or whether he sits. Meaning, this knowledge is the knowledge of their status. A knowledge of their status. Do I have that recognition of my imam? When I am performing the dua of faraj every single day, and I am reciting dua al-ahd every single morning, and I say, إني أجدد له في صبيحة يومي هذا عهدا وعقدا له في عنقي. Is this a reality? Am I truly renewing an allegiance? Or does this then become a contradiction during my everyday life? This is something for me to ponder about. Hold yourselves accountable before you are held accountable. حاسبوا أنفسكم قبل أن تحاسبوا. Because this is my core identity. My relation to Allah was first. My second was what? Relation to the Imam. Ahsantum. The final part, which inshallah we will focus more on tomorrow, is my relation to the community. It is something that shapes my core identity. It's not a layer. It's something that shapes my core identity. إِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. This nation, a nation is one individual, a group of people. It's a group of people. You are a group of people. Your core identity is that you are a group of people. Your relation to Allah comes first, yes. Your relation to the Imam comes second, yes. And the third part that shapes our core identity is the fact that we are a group of people. The community. Understanding myself, me as a Shi'i individual, I need to understand that I am a part of something bigger. I am a part of a Shi'i community. I am part of a community that said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, wa ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. These are the common values that we share. This is what allows me to then strengthen myself. Then whatever comes after that is another layer. Everything that comes after that, if it doesn't contradict this, it is fine. Understand myself of a group of people that said, we believe in Allah. We have iman in Allah. When Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba, and we mentioned a story in his regards, we mentioned this as well. When Imam al-Hasan al-Mushtaba used to recite the Quran, every time the verse would start, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, do you know what he used to do? He used to say, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. I am here for you, O Allah. He understood himself to be a part of the group of people that said what? Amanu, that we believe. Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. He said, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. Because he recognized himself as part of those who had belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. And you understand that we are a part of a community, a part of a group. Every single day in our salah, Allah made it wajib for us to recite one surah. The second surah is optional. Whatever surah that we can recite, whatever complete surah we can recite. But 5 prayers, 2 rak'at. In every rak'ah, Surah Al-Fatiha is wajib. How many times have we recited Surah Al-Fatiha a day? 10 times at least. That's if we haven't recited Surah Al-Fatiha for our marhumin and for other occasions. You will find that in that specific chapter, you are making a collective dua for your community members. Every single time in your salah, it is wajib for you to make a dua for your community members. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Iyaka a'budu or na'budu. A'budu is single. Na'budu is plural. It is you we worship. And it is you that we seek help to. And the important thing for us to understand is Surah Al-Fatiha is not just wajib in Jama'ah. Even when we are praying by ourselves, and yet we are still making dua for everyone else. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide us to the straight path. Not me. Not ihdini. اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Guide us. This is one. Go to your taslim. Again, many times we don't think of this. In our taslim, we mentioned the tashahud and how we understand the core identity from tashahud. Look at how we understand our core identity. Allah is reminding us of our core identity in our salah, in that which He had made obligatory for us to understand who we are and who we are turning back to. Assalamu alayka ayyuha nabi wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi as-salihin. Peace be upon us and upon the good servants of Allah Azza wa Jal. Even in our taslim, understand that we are a part of a bigger community and a bigger group. A constant reminder from Allah Azza wa Jal. And what a beautiful reminder this is. That which shapes my core identity. And this is why it is mustahab, for example, that in our dua, to make dua for community members before we make dua for our own selves. الجار قبل الدار, like Fatima al-Zahra عليها أفضل الصلاة والسلام would say. Your neighbor before your own self. And what a beautiful narration that is. Reciting dua in a collective manner is mustahab. Prayers in congregation, its thawab and its reward are much more than reciting or performing a prayer by our own selves. And inshallah, we will focus more on community and our roles in our community tomorrow in more detail. However, this is for us to understand what shapes our core identity. And yes, it is fine to then have multiple identities outside of this. And I'm just going to give a quick recap. The first is our relation to Allah Azza wa Jal. The second is our relation to the Imam. The third is our relation to the community. And I'll repeat it again, just so that we take this away with us, inshallah. And I want the answer from you. The first is our relation to Allah. The second, Imam. And the third, community. This is my core identity. Everything that comes after that is a layer. No more, no less. I recognize myself as Khoja, that's a layer on top of this. British, Khoja on top of, a layer on top of this. Iraqi, layer on top of this. Something else, a layer on top of this. Whatever it is, a layer on top of this. As long as it does not contradict my core identity, it is fine. When we have this, we have strength. When we have this, we understand who we are. When we have this, anything that comes our way is easy to then face. Because I recognize myself part of something bigger. I recognize myself that when I watch these millions flocking towards Aba Abdullah in the days of Arbaeen, I recognize myself as a part of them. Do you know how important this is? And oh, how our hearts yearn to be in Karbala right now. How our hearts yearn to be in Karbala right now. The Imams gave us things that show us what our identity is. You want to find a Muslim? Go and let's look at 5 specific signs, as Imam al-Hasan al-Askari said, a mu'min, sorry. You want to find a believer? 5 signs. 51 rak'at, ziyarah of Arbaeen, wearing a ring on the right finger, saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim out loud and doing sujood on a turba. 5 signs of a believer. Very clear. Before someone comes and says, by the way, ziyaratul Arbaeen means ziyarat Arbaeen mu'min, to visit 40 believers. No, not at all. Because even from the siyaq of the hadith, of how the hadith is narrated, it is clear that it is a hadith that is khas to a specific group of people, not something that is general for all Muslims. Because it said alamat al-mu'min, not alamat al-muslim firstly. Secondly, even the other attributes that Imam al-Hasan al-Askari said are attributes that are specific to the Ithna Asharis and to the mu'mineen from that specific faith, and not for anyone else. Salat ihda wa khamsin. Someone tells me, okay, we are not the only people with nafila prayers. True. But go and look at the jurisprudential books of, for example, our brothers from the Sunni faith. You'll find that the maximum amount of rak'ahs they amount to is 17, not 51 total. If you 17 of nafila plus your wajib salat, still it doesn't add to 51. The Ithna Ashari faith says what? 51, if you add everything together. Saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim out loud, specific to our jurisprudence. Performing sujood on a turba, specific to our jurisprudence. Wearing a ring on the right finger, specific to our mustahab acts. Therefore, when you come to ziyarat al-Arbaeen, the ziyarah of the 40, it is clear that here there is something that must be specific to this jurisprudence. Because Arbaeen mu'min, 40 believers, visiting them is something mustahab across all schools. It is not specific to a specific group of people, whereas Ziyaratul Arbaeen was specific. It is specific to those individuals that are flocking towards Aba Abdullah al-Hussein while saying Labbayka ya Hussein. Specific to them. Which is why Alam al-Majlisi and others of our great scholars, when they mention this hadith, they follow it by narrating the ziyarah of Arbaeen that was narrated by our beloved Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi afdal salati wa salam. That he narrated to his companion Safwan al-Jamal, and he narrates this. Before they would mention this, which also means that this narration is in reference to Ziyaratul Arbaeen. So these are things that shape our identity. Go and look at that, which when you look at the Ziyarah of Arbaeen, people from different nations, from different tribes, from different backgrounds, from different lifestyles, all come together as one. And the call is one. Labbayka ya Hussein. The call is one. They eat together. They drink together. They do everything together. They sleep together. They help each other. At times you will find people that have never met anyone holding hands together to help each other walk towards Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. You find a person struggling, you don't know their name, you don't know where they came from, you don't know what their background is, and suddenly you rush towards their aid. Why? Because they share that common value. They share your common value. Their relation to Allah, their relation to the Imam, and their relation to the community. They are heading towards one goal. Ummah, Allama Tabatabai says, a group of people that head towards one goal, one direction. Everyone is going in one direction towards Aba Abdullah. How our hearts yearn to be with him, and how our hearts yearn to be in that blessed shrine. But when I look at identity, and when I look at a group of people walking together, my heart goes back to Sham. There you also had a group of people walking together. But before I say a group of people, maybe it's better for me to say a group of women and children and Imam Zainul Abidin. Their identity, they knew it, but to the people it was unknown. Because a person comes to Imam Zain al-Abidin, he says, Alhamdulillah, alladhi fadahakum. Oh, praise be to Allah, the one who has exposed you. He says, oh Shaykh, it's as if you don't know us. He said, who are you? He said, have you read the Quran? When Allah Azza wa Jal said, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. He said, yes. He said, we are Ahlul Bayt. He said, have you read the Quran when Allah said, قُلْ لَا أَسْأَلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ أَجْرًا إِلَّا الْمَوَدَّةَ فِي الْقُرْبَى. Except for love and compassion. For the close ones, he said, Wallah, we are the qurba, we are the close ones. The identity was unknown to the people. The media of Bani Umayyah was a scary media for many individuals, for the Alawiyin to enter Sham. Because they made it seem as if the Alawiyin and the family of Ali ibn Abi Talib were not even close to Islam. When the news of the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen came to Sham, they said, how did he die? They said he died in sujood. They said, what, and Ali used to pray? These are the people of Sham. This is why when they then enter the court of Yazid, Yazid would order that orator to mount the Mambar, and he would start by performing sab, cursing Ali ibn Abi Talib, cursing Fatima al-Zahra, cursing Imam al-Hussein, all in front of Lady Zainab, the children, and Imam Zain al-Abidin. So Imam Zain al-Abidin says, O Yazid, allow me to go on these pieces of wood for me to say a few words. That for Allah it is that which He accepts and is pleased with. And for the people it has some reward. First he refused. Then they said, no, let us know who this person is. We don't know who he is. He goes and he stands on that pulpit. He says, O people, we were given 6 things and we were blessed with 7. This is what was shaping his identity. أعطينا العلم والحلم والفصاحة والبلاغة والشجاعة والمحبة في قلوب المؤمنين. وفضلنا بأن منا النبي المختار ومنا الصديق ومنا الطيار ومنا أسد الله وأسد رسوله ومنا سبطاء هذه الأمة ومنا مهديها. It is from us that the Holy Prophet Muhammad comes. And from us that Amir al-Mu'mineen comes. And from us Hamza. And from us Ja'far al-Tayyar. And from us Al-Hasan and Hussein. And from us is Al-Mahdi. Then he said, O people, the one who knows me now knows me. And the one who does not know me, I will inform you of who I am. أنا ابن مكة ومنى. أنا ابن زمزم والصفا. أنا ابن من حمل الركن بأطراف الردى. I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. You want to know me? Those who know me, now you know me. You don't know me, he's coming to identify himself. Did he use a single identity? No. He's saying, I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. All of these things shaped the identity of Imam Zain al-Abidin. When he is identifying himself to the people, then he describes the attributes of the Prophet. أنا ابن من حمل على البراق في الهوى. أنا ابن من دنا. أنا ابن من أسري به من المسجد الحرام إلى المسجد الأقصى. أنا ابن من دنا فتدلى فكان قاب قوسين أو أدنى, until he says, and that was my grandfather Muhammad al-Mustafa. Then he describes the attributes of Amir al-Mu'mineen. أنا ابن الطاعن برمحين. أنا ابن الضارب بسيفين. أنا ابن المقاتل ببدر وحنين. Until he says, Abu Sibtain, the father of the 2 asbat of the Holy Prophet. ذاك جدي علي ibn Abi Talib. Now people know the Prophet is his grandfather. Ali ibn Abi Talib is his grandfather. Then he says, oh people, you see these women that you see standing here that have been exposed to the men? Let me tell you what family I come from. أنا ابن نقيات الجيوب. أنا ابن عديمات العيوب. I am the son of modesty. I am the son of those whose shadows weren't even seen. I am the son of those who were holistic in their modesty. Oh people, do you know who my grandmother is? أنا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. أنا ابن خديجة الكبرى. Was this enough? Then he would say, oh people, this head that you see on a spear, have you heard of a person who died thirsty? He says, oh people, أنا ابن المقتول بكربلاء. أنا ابن العطشان حتى قضى، أنا ابن من رأسه على السنان يهدى، أنا ابن من حرمه من بلدة إلى بلدة تسبى. I am the son of the one who was killed in Karbala. I am the son of the one who was thirsty until he was slaughtered. I am the son of the one whose head is raised on a spear. I am the son of the one whose women are taken as captives from city to city. Ajarakum Allah, the people would start to cry. Now they have realized who this is. Yazid would order for the mu'adhin to perform the adhan. Ajarakum Allah, the mu'adhin would say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Imam Zainul Abidin would say, by Allah, nothing is greater than Allah. Then the mu'adhin would say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. He would say, my heart and my flesh and my blood had witnessed that there is no God but Allah with no partners. Then the mu'adhin would say, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Here Imam Zainul Abidin would turn around to Yazid. He would say to him, oh Yazid, this Muhammad that is mentioned, is he your grandfather or is he my grandfather? If you say that he is your grandfather, then by Allah you have lied. And if you say he is my grandfather, then why did you kill my father? And why did you kill his family members? And why did you take his family as captives? The people start to cry, and well, Yazid realizes the danger that is now upon him. He decides to put the family in a dungeon. You know our narrations, when they describe that dungeon, they say it is a dungeon that did not protect the women and the children from cold or from heat. When they were placed in that dungeon, Hind, the wife of Yazid, would say, oh Yazid, I want to go and see these captives. He said, go. She enters. They place a chair for her. Lady Zainab is on the floor and Hind, the wife of Yazid, is on a chair. She says to them, from where did you come from? What city are you from? Lady Zainab would answer. She says, we are from the Medina. She said, there are many Medinas. Which Medina do you mean? She said, we are from the Medina of Rasulullah. Hind would rise up. She puts her hand on her head out of respect and sits on the floor. She says, oh woman, I want to ask you about a house in Medina. Can you inform me? She said, ask. She said, I want to ask you about the house of Ali. I want to ask you about the house of Amir al-Mu'min. She says, what do you want from the house of Ali? She said, I want to ask you about Hussein. I want to ask you about Abbas. I want to ask you about Zainab. She said to Hind, as for Hussein, said to Hind, as for Hussein, this is his head pasted on the door of the palace. And as for Abbas, this is head beside the head of Hussein. And if you ask about Zainab, I am Zainab. The one talking to you is Zainab. I am Zainab, and you know me. I face calamities from the age of 3. I am the one that witnessed my mother behind the door. And for my father's head there was no cure. In a bucket, my brother Hassan, blood I found. I am the one that witnessed Hussein on the ground. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. Oh Allah, we ask you by the best of your creation. Oh Allah, we ask you by Fatima and her father, her husband and her children, Ya Allah. Oh Allah, whoever has a need, oh Allah, grant them their needs, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Oh Allah, whoever is ill or knows of an ill person, oh Allah, grant them a speedy recovery by the ill of Karbala, Zainul Abidin, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Oh Allah, hasten the repentance of Sahib al-Zaman and allow us to be amongst his supporters, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. Those who have attended today's majlis, may Allah accept your deeds with the best of his acceptance. The organizers of today's majlis, may Allah accept your deeds with the best of his acceptance. For your marhumin, for the marhumin of those who have attended, for the marhumin of Shi'at Amir al-Mu'mineen, remember them all with a Surah Fatiha before it aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، چہلم تیرا منا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا، جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، چہلم تیرا منا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا۔ معلوم ہے یہ تم کو زینب اجر چکی ہے، لیکن تیری شہادت گھر گھر پہنچ گئی ہے، شاباش دو بہن کو، شاباش دو بہن کو، بھیا گلے لگا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا۔ بھیا تمہاری زینب اب وہ نہیں رہی ہے، پہچان لوگے مجھ کو، حالت بدل گئی ہے، چلتی ہے یہ ضعیفہ، چلتی ہے یہ ضعیفہ، بھائی کمر جھکا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا۔ سجاد اور باقر دیں گے گواہی میری، کھائے ہیں تازیان بنت علی نے پھر بھی، لے آئی شامیوں سے، لے آئی شامیوں سے، وارث تیرے بنا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا قیدی بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں۔ کیسے بتاؤں بھیا بازار میں جو گزری، کہتے تھے سب کے مارو یہ ہے علی کی بیٹی، بابا کے بھی میں بدلے، بابا کے بھی میں بدلے، سب آئی ہوں چھکا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا کا دین بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا۔ امت نے تجھ پہ بھائی رونے کہاں دیا ہے، جی بھر کے میں نے تیرا ماتم کہاں کیا ہے، روئے گی آج زینب، روئے گی آج زینب فرش عزا بچھا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا کا دین بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا کا دین۔ جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، جاؤں گی اب مدینہ، چہلم تیرا منا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا کا دین بچا کے، بھیا میں آ گئی ہوں نانا کا دین بچا۔ یا حسین 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 محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا حسين الشهيد بكربلاء، السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى محمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته۔ بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين۔